Good morning. I'm Mark Pattison, representing Robert Rodriguez on the Cemetery Board. And I'm going to call the November meeting of your state Cemetery Board to order. It is a regular meeting with two of our board members in attendance and one remote.
Well, Joe is attending from a location where the public could be present if they so desire.
So we're fully compliant with all the rules. I don't think of any other open remarks other than to ask the other board members themselves. Joe?
Hi, I'm Jill Faber. I'm representing Attorney General Letitia James.
This is Thomas Fuller representing Dr. Mary Bassett for the Department of Health.
Great, glad to have you here. And the next order of business is to review the minutes of the last meeting as distributed. Does anybody have any suggested changes or corrections or concerns? No?
Not here.
No? No suggestions for changes, then I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting as distributed. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Hi.
Minutes are approved. Are there any pending legislation or other reports from Council's office?
This is Rob Vanderblus. No legislative report this month. There was no updates to report.
Great. Anybody have any questions for Rob? All right. Louis, you're going to give the division report?
Sure. Give me 1 second. So, couple of staffing updates. Welcome Matt Leandro, who started with us a couple weeks ago. Senior accountant based here in Albany. He will soon have more company. We have another senior accountant who is supposed to technically start on Thanksgiving, but of course, most on Thanksgiving, so she will be starting the day after Thanksgiving, when program note, we are open the day after Thanksgiving. We are working on, I believe this will actually happen, so I think I can say this. Joe Ambrose, a former associate accountant, retired effective February 2021. We are, it's our understanding that he will be returning to us in a part-time capacity. The details are still waiting on confirmation of the details, but I am told that he is able to be hired. We're just going to figure out exactly when he's going to start. He'll be working primarily, as he always did, in the Utica office. That means that, with the exception of the second associate accountant position, Joe's old job, and our administrative assistant in Albany, we are now back at full staff, which is a good thing. So I have a pitch to the board today on delegated duties. So there's a whole bunch of things that the board delegated to us. I'm not going to list them all. This is back in, I want to say, January 2019. Some of them are things that the board had formerly delegated to us. Some of them are things that we kind of acted as if it was our authority, but it was never actually given to us. So that was taken care of in the meeting back in January 2019. Recently, the board delegated to us the ability to approve columbarium applications where it's not the cemetery's first columbarium, it's a prefab unit. Just to clarify, the two types of applications I'm going to talk about now. The only change in how we process these applications is that it won't have to wait for you guys to hear it and you don't have to read it. The application packet and division recommendation is going to look exactly the same. We just won't have to wait for a meeting to do that. There are two cases for that. One of them is pretty important as things go. It's for retort replacements. As of March 15, 2020, when the regulations took effect, about 30% of the cremation retorts in New York State are not going to comply with DEC regulations come March 15, 2025. So that's a lot of retort replacements that are going to have to happen. In the typical retort replacement, a crematory takes an existing crematory space, pulls out the old machine, puts in the new machine. There are no real changes either in cremation capacity or in the structure of the building or anything like that. The only permit typically required for something like that is gas hookup, which would be, I think, a plumber's sign off, at least in most places. Not to, you should take this with a little bit of grain of salt, but on some level, this is literally replacing your oven. And we don't think that there's been issues where crematories have missed deadlines to close on purchasing retorts. The supply chain shortage has affected cremation equipment. And because of that, and between inflation and supply chain issues, manufacturers are all too happy to not honor a contract they have and sell the unit to somebody else for 30% more money because they don't have enough product to sell, so they just as happy to resell it for more. So to expedite things and to recognize the fact that these are sort of only a fairly minimal sense of major alteration, we are recommending that the board delegate certain retort replacements to us. The carve-outs for this are, this is not going to apply to a crematory adding a retort. Where you're adding a retort, we think it's worthy of broader discussion as to whether there's a need for additional cremation capacity in the area. In the category of adding a retort, there are several crematories that have non-operational retorts. They're just kind of sitting there because it was cheaper not to have to remove the old unit. If they suddenly wake up and say, I'm going to replace this one that hasn't been used in 20 years with a new one, we would recommend that that still go to the board. We don't want to handle those ourselves because, again, it's an increase in cremation capacity. Second category we don't want delegated to us are where the financing is through a PM loan. We would need to get a recommendation of the board on a loan against the permanent maintenance fund anyway, and so we might as well have a discussion of the whole issue since we're coming to you anyway. The third one is cemetery. It is for, we don't want to delegate retort replacement of grandfathered standalone crematories. Because of the board's interpretation of the grandfather statute as limiting those crematories to essentially what they had as of the time of grandfathering, there are lots of little wrinkles that can emerge in those kind of applications, and we think it's better for those to still be heard by the whole board. So basically what we're talking about is not grandfathered standalones, paying for it without touching PM, not de facto or formally adding a new retort. For those, we'd like to be able to do them ourselves, do the major alteration application ourselves. The other is just a little wrinkle. It was brought to our attention by last month's application by Ferncliff, not included in, there are two, not included in the board, clearly included in the board's delegation is when a cemetery retrofits an existing mausoleum building to add niches inside it. For a case like that, we think all the reasons you delegated additional prefab columbariums to us makes sense to delegate that as well. It doesn't really have any effect on the lot owners, and there's no effect on the community or the environment. It's almost akin to installing built-in bookcases in your house. We're just sticking in another thing. Again, we're not talking about situations where there'd be a PM loan because that would have to come to the board anyway. But for those, we're also recommending that a cemetery's first prefab columbarium also be delegated to us now. Generally, the reason we distinguish between first and second is, when we asked for the delegation initially, is that when you've got one already, it's not jarring to the lot owners to see one show up in a cemetery and you have a track record of sales. We think that in today's environment, adding a prefab columbarium to a cemetery isn't gonna shock any lot owners, period, full stop. Whether it's the first one or not. So that rationale, which we use to distinguish them, on reflection doesn't really hold water. And in terms of predicting sales, none of us really have any great expertise on that, but I'm not sure your collective crystal ball is any better than our collective crystal ball. And I just don't know that discussing something really minor like installing a 24-inch prefab unit for the first time in a smaller cemetery is frankly worth the board's time. But I'll concede that those are two potentially distinct things that one could reach different conclusions about. So to recap, we're talking about three things: certain types of retort replacements, retrofitting mausoleums to add niche space, and niche space, not crypt space, by the way, and first prefab columbariums. Again, we will, the plan, by the way, is that we will report that we have approved these on a monthly basis to the board. So you're not totally out of the loop as to what's going on with these types of applications. That was probably way unnecessarily long-winded.
Okay, so the board has received the memo from Lewis on these issues. The goal is efficiency. The mitigation for all delegated duties is required reporting to the board on actions taken by the division, so the board can be aware, and also the board can at any time revoke a delegation of authority if they thought there were issues that didn't get resolved properly and no longer wanted to do that.
And if there's something that we think needs a broader hearing, we can always bring it in anyway, even if it is delegated to us.
Yeah. So, okay. So that said, is there a discussion? Rob, would you add to the discussion at all?
Oh, I nothing that I want to offer, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great. So to the board, do they have any? Is there discussion, questions?
No question.
Questions?
I just have a quick question, just logistics. So, would the division then report to the board at the next board meeting, or how would the board know that the applications were considered and resolved? Is that, or would that not be? Is that not part of the proposal?
So for our existing delegated duties, we report to them. We make a statistical report quarterly as to the numbers of things. I think we missed last quarter, but in general, we put together a report of the number of rules and regulations, whatever things like that we've approved. In this case, I would anticipate us reporting on a month. So we have, I can think of off the top of my head, 3 columbarium projects that would be subject to this, 2 of which already are. 1 would be not made subject to this. 2 at Pine Lawn, 1 at Woodlawn, Syracuse. I'd anticipate that at the December meeting, because we're almost done with those applications, that we would report that we had approved those 3 applications by name.
Or disapprove?
Or, right, well, if we recommended against it, that would then, I think, go necessarily, that I think the logical thing to do would be to have the board here in the first instance. Rather than trying to convene an ALJ and have a hearing on it, I would present that to the board with a negative recommendation.
Are there, we have rules about how our timeliness in responding to applications in general?
I don't remember whether there's a deadline for, I don't recall that there is a deadline for columbarium and mausoleum applications. There are deadlines for major alteration applications, but subject to count, they depend on how large the cemetery is. Subject to council's opinion, though, my understanding of those deadlines is the statute doesn't say they're deemed approved if we don't act by a certain time. There's a concept in state law on time periods that are directory, which is fancy for aspirational, and mandatory, which is if you don't act by that time, something happens. There are a couple of situations where our statute specifically says something happens if you don't act. New crematories is an example, if I remember right. If you're building a new crematory and the board doesn't act by a certain time, it's approved. Rate applications, if we don't object by a certain time, it's approved. I don't believe major alterations, I don't think columbariums have a deadline at all, and I don't think major alterations have that kind of language that it's approved. In fact, I know they don't.
Okay, so, but I guess my point is, I think in terms of the reporting to the board, that aging of applications, our goal here is to be efficient, right? To make this something that we can be more timely to request. So I would like to suggest that the division include, as part of their report, the time it took for us to respond to the application and make it approval.
We absolutely can do that. The only wrinkle I'll throw in there is that oftentimes the delay isn't on us. So for example, the Woodlawn Syracuse Mausoleum application, we've had ready to go for several weeks, but the notice said we're taking comments until November 15th. So we're not going to send the sign-off letter until November 16th. So
Which would have nothing to do with reporting, it would have to do with an explanation about why something was or wasn't approved.
But if we came in and we said, oh, we got this in August, and we're not getting it until December, that looks like we're taking a long time.
Yes, but we would explain it.
Perhaps the solution is that the reporting could begin once the application is complete. So if there are outstanding matters, the time that the division takes to make a determination once the application is complete is what would be reported.
Yeah, to keep this simple, we can just say date received, date deemed complete, date approved.
I'm just looking for trigger.
That makes sense.
Trigger data so the board can, review them and decide if this continues to be a useful way of doing business or if more oversight is required.
Okay.
So I just think that's an element of data that would be helpful to me.
I just want to add as well, and that this could sometimes allow the cemeteries to move quicker so that the pricing that they have locked in, they may not realize higher prices.
Yeah, I think
It's another benefit.
Right, especially with the cremation report applications.
Okay. So Jill, do you have other questions or things we should add?
No, that answered my question, thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion just that we approve the recommended delegation of duties for retort replacement, which includes, and columbarium, which includes niche additions within an existing space, as described in the memo, which we should memorialize in the minutes because there are exclusions, no PM loan, that kind of thing. So I don't know if that's sufficient. Motion.
Second that.
Second? Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Hi.
We've delegated those duties and we'll get reporting from the division as we go forward. Okay, Louis, do you have other?
I've taken up way more of your time than I intended.
Okay. Well, we're just glad to have you here. All right. We have a vandalism report and some vandalism applications. We have 4 of them.
I circulated the report. Activity is slow this time of year as far as collections. I have seen an uptick in the final payments coming in. The work is getting done, so we're sending vouchers up to fiscal for the 75% payments. So that's an uptick. On annual reports, we've received about 1,400 so far this year, and we remain at about 40% doing the online form.
And I should add that Bridget Coleman, our administrative assistant in New York, is working her way through the other 300, or at least those fraction of them who aren't on a fiscal year that is different from calendar year, to find out what's going on with their reports.
And she's been very successful with that too. It gets their attention.
Great. Anything else, Lucia?
No.
We have 4 vandalism fund applications, all under the dangerous monument category. do them one at a time. First one is Coventry Union Cemetery in Shenango County in the amount of $42,332.24. So I'm going to present that to the board.
Yeah, this is Brendan Stant with the division. We got an application here from Coventry Union Cemetery of the town of Coventry in Shenango County. They have applied for the repair of 23 dangerous monuments. They've got a huge cemetery, a lot of which is in need of this repair, and I believe this is their third application. So they submitted 2 estimates, and we have recommended in favor of approval at the amount of the lower estimate plus the advertising costs of $42,332.24. The cemetery has received no comments. They do not have any address information available, and they have received no comments from their notice. So I recommend that this application be approved.
Okay, is there any questions from legal counsel?
Only if the board does approve the application, that the approval be subject to the availability of funds.
Any questions from our board members? Questions? Right, so I'll make a motion. Go ahead. I'll make a motion to approve the application of Coventry Union Cemetery in Shenango County for hazardous monument repair in the amount of $42,330.24. Do you have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Application is approved. Second one is East Side Cemetery in Franklin County in the amount of $24,075.33. Present that to the board.
This is Mike Seelman from the division. East Side Cemetery is a small cemetery in Chateaugay, Franklin County. They submitted an application originally for the repair of 20 hazardous monuments. After looking at the monuments, the cemetery and the contractor and I agreed that 3 of those monuments did not appear to be hazardous. At that time, the cemetery requested a new estimate from the sole bidder, and they received that. Prior to me looking at the monuments, the cemetery contacted 2 other contractors and were not able to get additional bids. The cemetery has not been able to contact any of the lot owners, and I've made a recommendation to approve this application in the amount of $24,075.33.
My
I have
only
a
comment.
question.
Oh, go ahead, Joe.
No, sorry, my question was that they weren't able to contact any of the lot owners. Can you just say a little more about that, what they did to, make an attempt, or do they not have records?
Yeah, it's a very old cemetery with limited operations. They put an ad, it's required in the Malone Telegram once a week.
Okay, so they did that, okay.
Yep, I'm sorry. Should have clarified that. They listed the names and the lot owners. They didn't get any response from that. And
Okay,
then we further asked them to go back and look at their records to see if they, had received donations or any contact, and they did not have any information related to the lot owners. And we've made the determination that they can't locate the lot owners.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any questions? Any other questions, Joe?
No.
All right. I'm gonna.
My only comment would be the initial application from the cemetery was requesting assistance with 20 monuments, and the recommendation from the division here is for 17.
Right, this is Mike explaining to me that more knowledge.
Okay. I'm gonna make a motion first to amend the motion on Coventry Union. I ignored Rob's advice about subject to available funds. we'll make the first one subject to available funds. And I also make a motion to, include in that motion, to recommend the approval of the application from East Side Cemetery in Franklin County in the amount of $24,075.32. Again, subject to the availability of funds. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any other questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Application is approved. Oakwood Cemetery in Troy, in the amount of $90,691.30. Is there someone applying for that?
Yes, this is Len Green from the division. We have Oakwood Cemetery application for the repair of 78 hazardous monuments. This is located in Oakwood Cemetery in the city of Troy, an historic cemetery, and the cemetery is has been this is several applications. Usually every year they come in for an application for the repair of hazardous monuments, and they've been working diligently to restore all the monuments in the cemetery. So they have a dedicated staff there. The ones that don't apply, the smaller monuments, they've taken it upon themselves to repair a lot of the smaller ones. So they're very dedicated to repairing all the monuments in the cemetery. So this one, I did visit the cemetery and was able to confirm that all the 78 monuments under application are indeed hazardous and in danger of falling over. And most of them are very old, so they had no response to the notice that they placed in the paper, and the cemetery no longer has any records for these monuments in order to contact the lot owners directly. So this appears to be a legitimate claim, and I do recommend approval for that amount for $90,691.30.
Anything else to add, Rob?
No comments from council.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the application of Oakwood Cemetery in Troy in Rensselaer County for hazardous monuments in the amount of $90,691.30. Do I have a second?
Subject to the availability. of funds.
Subject to the availability of funds. Boom. Get me.
I'll second.
Any other questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Last one is Ludlowville Cemetery in Tompkins County in the amount of $27,838.52.
Yeah, this is Brendan Stanton again. We've got Ludlowville Pine Grove Cemetery of the town of Lansing in Tompkins County. They've submitted an application for the repair of 20 hazardous monuments. The monuments appeared to be hazardous when I visited there. If you look closely at the application, I had originally been there in 2015. I did visit again to make sure that they all remained hazardous, and none of them have either toppled or magically repaired themselves, so they still qualify. The cemetery stated that it didn't have any information to contact lot owners. It published the legal notices required. So this looks like a good application, and I have recommended in favor of approval in the amount of the lower estimate plus the cemetery's expenses, which is $27,838.52.
Okay. Comments from council?
My only comment would be page 6 of the application includes a letter from the board where the board wrote that also attached are documents of our efforts to reach family members of the monuments and were unable to obtain sufficient funds for the repairs. I just want to clarify that those efforts refer to the newspaper posting, and there wasn't anything else attached indicating efforts that they made.
Yeah, so my assumption is the statement referred to the legal notice. I reached out to the cemetery and asked if they had any additional records. They didn't.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll make a motion to approve the application of the Ludlowville Cemetery in Tompkins County for hazardous monuments repair in the amount of $27,838.52, subject to the availability of funds. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Okay. Thank you. All right, we move on to some other business. Oak Hill Cemetery, in, I don't know where it is, but it's for a columbarium application.
This is Len Green again. I'll present that. This is from Oak Hill Cemetery, which is a small cemetery set on a hill down in Greene County. They're looking to purchase a small 48-inch columbarium, a prefab unit, and place it in the area of the cemetery that is not the best area for in-ground burial. So they decided that that it would suit it would fit nicely in this particular area, which is close to the entrance, and it will gain a lot of visibility upon visitors entering the cemetery. It'll be easily seen, and their hopes are that that will generate lot sales. They have had a lot of interest from local funeral directors who are requesting that they consider placing a columbarium because they are bringing other of their clients' families, their cremains, to other cemeteries outside of Greene County. Apparently, there's no other columbarium units in Greene County in any cemeteries, according to the trustees. So they will be filling a void by placing this columbarium, and that's their hopes that alone will generate lot sales. So they feel confident that they will be able to sell niches when they do place this. And so it's a 48 niche unit, and it will be it's a prefab unit, and it will be delivered and placed on a 4-inch concrete pad. And, it looks to be, they have the signs posted, and they have not received to date any response from lot owners or visitors to this proposal. So it appears to be a good project, and they're hoping that they will sell all these niches, and we recommend approval.
Okay, so Rob, any other comments on the application?
No, my only comment was going to be that the public notice ran November 1st, but Len confirmed that they have not received any comments to date. So I appreciate that. That was going to be my only comment.
Okay. Okay, so are there any other questions from the board on this application? I'll make a motion to approve the application of Oak Hill Cemetery in Greene County for a columbarium, 48-inch columbarium. And they're financing this, Len, out of what?
Their general fund.
General
Yeah.
fund?
Yep.
So this is one that, based on what we discussed earlier, this is one that wouldn't come before the board. Am I right about that?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I've made the motion to approve it. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Next one is Greenwood Cemetery, major renovation of the building.
Sure. So Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn has acquired, with the board's permission, property across the street. Includes a landmarked greenhouse building, the Ware Greenhouse, that's in a state of major disrepair, and a piece of property behind that that had some other, I think it's a house and a commercial building that have both been demolished. The cemetery's administrative offices are extremely cramped, not really adequate for their present purposes. The cemetery's also embarked on a program of acquiring art of artists buried in the cemetery. which they have no place to display. If you go to their administrative offices, the art is literally leaning against walls in corridors because they have no place to put it. The plan that the cemetery has is to move its administrative offices across Fifth Avenue onto into the Ware Greenhouse and new building to be built adjacent and connecting to the Ware Greenhouse, and also have basically a gallery slash event space slash multi-purpose space over in that building. With the now soon to be former office space, which is adjacent to the chapel and the columbarium, the chapel and the crematory, they will redevelop that space as columbarium space. So this is like a large indoor columbarium complex where they believe they're running out of glass front niches. They believe they'll have, and experience in New York City generally supports this, they'll have no trouble selling those at all. So formally, what's before the board right now is an application for approval of the columbarium and an application for approval of major renovation consisting of the construction and build out of the new building slash rehab of the existing greenhouse building. I think our write-up addresses all of the relevant factors. I know council had something particular to add on this one and look separately on it. But I'm going to stop right there and see if anybody has any questions on this piece. Rob, you might as well do your piece.
Is this a place to talk about seeker?
Certainly.
Okay, so just we're going to have just a conversation to make sure in public that as a result of reviewing other applications, we've looked at our procedures around seeker, and I'd like Rob to just sort of talk a little bit about how we're approaching that.
Okay, so SEEKR stands for the State Environmental Quality Review Act. And we, on some applications, may be referencing SEEKR and discussing it. So we thought it'd be helpful to give a brief overview and identify some helpful resources for everyone. Because this is brief, of course, I'm not going to go into every nuance and exception, but just a brief overview of what SEEKR entails. So in part, the part applicable to us, SEEKR applies when an agency approves an action. Actions are defined, that's a defined term. They're projects or physical activities, such as construction or other activities that may affect the environment by changing the use, appearance, or condition of any natural resource or structure that, among other conditions, requires approval from an agency. Similarly, SEEKR defines environment broadly. So there's things that we all think about when we think about environment: land, air, water, plants, and animals, but SEEKR goes beyond those common conceptions of environment to include things like agricultural, historic, and archaeological significance, noise, existing patterns in population concentration, distribution or growth, existing community or neighborhood character, and human health. When an agency's approval is ministerial or non-discretionary, or when the proposed action has been classified as a Type 2, SEEKR doesn't apply. The analysis under SEEKR isn't required. When the classification is a Type 1 action or an unlisted action, then what should happen is that the applicant submits an environmental assessment form. It's a worksheet on DEC's website, very handy. And then they complete Part 1, asks a series of questions, and again, the DEC has a variety of workbooks and tools available to help applicants complete Part 1. The agency then completes Parts 2 and 3. The agency is completing Part 2 and 3 to assist in determining significance. That's deciding whether or not there would be a significant adverse impact on the environment. A negative declaration means the proposed action won't have a significant adverse impact on the environment. That's the end of the SEEKR review. A positive declaration means the proposed action will have a significant adverse impact on the environment, and that typically requires the completion of what's called an environmental impact statement. The agency and the applicant goes through a scoping process to decide what's going to be included in that environmental impact statement within the scope of it. And that environmental impact statement is a document, and it's a way for applicants, agencies, and the public to consider the significant adverse environmental impacts, alternatives, and mitigation of those significant adverse environmental impacts. Now, throughout all of this, there may be times where a coordinated review is either required or preferred. A coordinated review is required for type 1 actions. It can be, you can do a coordinated review for untyped actions if you so choose, but let me tell you what a coordinated review is. Sometimes you're going to have an action in which a variety of different agencies have to approve. A coordinated review is when those agencies select a lead agency to, of course, lead that review process. The lead agency considers the interests and concerns of other involved agencies when making that first determination of significance. So I'm raising all this because there may be times when the division is reaching out to applicants for Part 1 of an EAF. We're seeking additional information to help the division, with my help too, come up with an initial proposed classification of the application that's going to go before the cemetery board. Does anyone have any questions about that overview that I just provided?
Again, just wanted to sort of have this as a public discussion. We have work to do on how we're going to approach all these issues, and it will have some impact, potential impact on cemeteries as they prepare applications. So we want to sort of alert them to that, our constituents to that, but also we'll have to figure out ways to both train and provide technical assistance as is appropriate to cemeteries. And again, we can guide them by pointing them to DEC resources or other resources that may be helpful to them. So, and perhaps some of our partners can also do some training in that regard. So, does anyone have any questions about just this sort of broad discussion about secret? Okay. All right, thank you.
Now let's go back to this application.
Yeah, this application, is there comments on secret for that?
You're up, you are.
Certainly. So for this major renovation application, an application to build columbaria, so the major renovation application could be classified as a type 2 action, as a replacement, rehabilitation, or reconstruction of a structure in kind on the same site. And this was a little bit more involved in the review because it is adjacent to a historic landmark, the Weir Greenhouse. And when a proposed action is adjacent to a historic landmark, the thresholds in type 1 are reduced. But even at those reduced thresholds, this does not rise to the level, the size of the proposed project does not rise to the level of a type 1 action. So it can appropriately be classified as a type 2 action. And further review under seeker would not be required. Similarly, the proposal to convert existing office space to house columbaria could be classified as maintenance or repair involving no substantial changes to the structure or facility. And these sort of, interior renovations are the kinds of examples that the DEC and the seeker handbook identifies as the kinds of actions that would qualify as that type 2 action. So here we proposed a classification as a type 2 action in which further review under seeker would not be required.
I should have added, well, first of all, I'll mention that the project does have landmarks approval already. The city Landmarks Preservation Commission has already approved these. But I should have added that our recommendation of approval is subject to, there's innumerable, there's a lot of local permits required here, some of which the cemetery, many of which the cemetery already has, some of which they don't. Our recommendation for approval would be conditioned on them receiving all local permits still outstanding. I should have also mentioned that there are a substantial amount of grants and other funds that the project is receiving from state legislature, and city sources to the tune, I want to say it's something over $15 to $16 million. So this is a project that has a lot of support from various levels of government.
Okay, so the division has made a determination of a type 2 action, so with that in mind, the board can agree or disagree on that. But I would propose a motion to approve major renovation agreement with cemetery subject to receipt of all required approvals and permits. Anything else I can put in there? Right?
And approval of the columbarium.
And approval of the columbarium. The major renovation, including new building and approval of the columbarium. So, I'm not sure I was crystal clear on that. Anybody, board members have any questions on the motion and what we've determined? Okay, so I made that motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The application for Greenwood Cemetery for major renovations at columbarium is approved. Next one is application for Whitehaven Memorial Park, a major renovation, a new road.
Brendan, you want to take first crack at this?
Sure, it's Brendan Stanton again. We've got Whitehaven Memorial Park of the town of Parenton in Monroe County, and they have applied for a cemetery renovation to construct a new roadway. The roadway is through a wetland. They have the necessary permit from the DEC and the Army Corps. So even though they don't necessarily intend to develop this section immediately, this is the time, this is their window to put the road in. So I visited the site. It's part of their general plan. It's in the rear of the cemetery. It's not going to interfere with any other lots. It's a nice natural area. Be very successful if they develop it similarly to the other graves that are sold in that area. They have a product that's more of a natural wooded sort of experience that this area would also be well suited for. So there's no question that they will, be able to recoup the cost when they choose to develop and use this section. So the project is anticipated to cost $219,200. That will come out of the cemetery's general fund. They anticipated doing the project next year. It'll be completed in the summer. So with all that taken into consideration, I have recommended approval of this application contingent on the receipt of stamped engineering plans if we have not received them by this time. And I've also recommended that in order to approve the draft EAF that was included prepared in connection with this application.
Okay, and Rob, the EAF was.
So here, we looked at the proposed action. We consulted the type 1 lists and the type 2 lists, and we could not find the category. So we are proposing that this is an unlisted action, in which case the short form, environmental assessment form, is required. The applicant submitted part 1 with a signature date of, I think, 9/15. It appears on page 27 of part 1 of the application materials. And the division and I then worked through proposed parts 2 and 3 for the cemetery board's review. We have a proposed summary, in which case we, what we're recommending is that the board find that there are no or small impacts through the list of 11 questions, and that the cemetery board find that it's determined based upon the information and analysis above and any supporting documentation that the proposed action will not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts. And we go through the town's planning document, how it's zoned already, the impacts on the community, and that the proposed road would impact 0.061 acres of wetland, and that the construction would have a small impact on wetlands and a small increase in the potential for erosion and flooding, but this is offset by the construction of a water drainage system and retention pond. And according to the cemetery's stormwater pollution plan and stormwater management report, which was prepared by a professional engineer, it anticipates that the peak stormwater discharge from the site will decrease after these mitigation measures in the proposed project are completed.
So, guidance here, is there a two-part motion here? Does the board have to make a motion approve the determination of the EAF
Yes, yes.
separately from the application for the road?
Mm-hmm. Yep, and
as part of the approval of the EAF, as part of the approval of the EAF, y'all gotta figure out who's gonna sign it on behalf of the board. Because board, we don't need 3 signatures, like we do with board orders. Minor mechanical thing, but it's just something we haven't done before.
And I think we discussed, since it's a determination of the board,
Then you can.
then I think I would sign it and it's convenient.
So the resolution would empower you to do that.
Okay? So, are there any questions of this before we take action? I'll make a motion to approve the environmental assessment form, EAF form, which determined this is an unlisted action, but I think does not have a negative impact on the environment. That is mitigated by the actions taken, and so the board would approve that determination and authorize me as the board chair to sign the EAF form.
Brendan, I want to ask one question. Well, you can do that one first, right? Because I have a
Yes.
question on the major alteration.
Yes, I'll do this first. Let's do
Go
that. Motion is before the board. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, write it in your diary. It's new ground. Second motion is to approve the application of Pine Memorial Park for the road reconstruction.
No. We're still on Whitehaven.
I'm sorry, Whitehaven, I just moved down. Whitehaven is a, Memorial Park as a new road, and you're gonna add some information?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, Brendan, do we know how many of the other permits they don't have still? We do, right?
I do not, but the cemetery is on the line if we'd like to ask them.
I mean, the reason I ask is I think it probably, I don't think you said so in so many words in your report, but this ought to be contingent not only on receipt of stamped plans, but on the cemetery receiving any other permits still outstanding. Because my recollection is that there are still local approvals that they don't have. But I think the town sign off is something they're waiting on.
the Conservation Board in their minutes indicated it would recommend approval to the Planning Board. I have not seen Planning Board
Okay.
minutes.
Again, I don't anticipate any of this being an issue, but specifically, we generally don't want anything starting until they got all their approvals, so.
And they're paying for this how?
General fund.
So the motion includes a motion to approve, subject to the receipt of signed and stamped plans for the road by a certified engineer, and the receipt of all other required permits, municipal or other permits. Second?
I'll second.
Any questions, clarifications, corrections? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Application Whitehaven Memorial Park is approved. Moving down, we have an application from Pine Lawn Memorial Park, major renovation, a road reconstruction. Someone presenting that to us?
Carrie, that's you there, right?
Yes, that is me. Good morning, everyone.
All right,
This is
go
Carrie
nuts.
McGovern with of cemeteries. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, making sure I'm not on mute. Pine Lawn Memorial Park in Suffolk County, New York, has submitted an application for reconstruction of a roadway. It's a major renovation application. And what they want to do is they'd like to remove a section of roadway they already have that goes through a very highly trafficked area of the cemetery and extend it. They want to widen it by 10 feet into an unused area of the cemetery, and it would be a way to better accommodate the traffic that they receive. There's a lot of funerals that come that way, a lot of visitor traffic, so they just want to extend the roadway out and widen it 10 feet. And the swath of roadway they want to widen comes to approximately 3,725 feet in length. What they want to do is they want to remove the existing roadbed and concrete curbs and drainage and replace all of that and widen it. And this is a way for them to better accommodate their clientele. The project is estimated to cost about $1.5 million. And the cemetery can afford this. It's going to come out of the general fund, which has a balance of $16.3 million as of December of last year. And what else am I going to tell you about this project? Yeah, they have estimates in that total about $1.5 million, and the work would be completed, if approved, in the spring of 2023.
Okay. Is there anything else to add, Rob?
Again, this could be classified as a type 2 action as a replacement, rehabilitation, or reconstruction of the structure or facility in kind. There's another type 2 listing where, repaving of existing highway is not involving the addition of new travel lanes. It's not a highway, but they are also not adding new lanes. Consistent with the division's recommendation, an engineering report is required by 19 NYCRR 201.16E. And page 26 of the application, which is Exhibit 4 from the cemetery's application, there is a drawing, but I don't know who drew it. And then I just want to point out that at page 18 of the board resolution, the board authorized, empowers, and directs officers of Pine Lawn to retain licensed architecture and engineers to prepare the design plan and blueprints and provide the estimated total cost of construction, including landscaping. So consistent with the division's recommendation, if the board does approve the application, I would recommend that it be subject to the receipt of stamp plans from the engineer.
Okay, so the determination is a type 2 action not requiring additional review.
Correct.
And that the major renovation would be subject to, the road reconstruction would be subject to receipt of stamped drawings by a certified engineer and the receipt of any or all other permits. Any other requirements?
Mr. Chairman, if I could,
Sure.
On the application, David Fleming for Pine Lawn. This is an application that's nearly identical to the Merritt Avenue road replacement. We're not talking about doing anything other than tearing up the road and replacing it in kind. The resolution that was referred to was by the board, gave wide latitude to the officers to procure any necessary engineering or other work that needed to be done to do the project. The roadway does not require that, as far as it's like any other town or anyone else would be ripping up the road and putting a new one down. All of the drainage is the same as previously approved by the board without plans, where the drainage would go directly into underneath the road. It doesn't go into any off-site areas. It's literally just a road reconstruction. And consistent with the other approvals of the cemetery board for the same cemetery, the same projects, I would request that the engineering plans not be required for this. It was bid as a construction project to redo a road. They have the same schematics that were included in the application that they've utilized for every project at the cemetery.
Okay, so that's before the board. I think, Rob, you have comments on that? And I think our view is that our regs require engineer drawings, is that right?
Yes.
it's a little bit more complicated than that. The regulation specifically says that the report is supposed to be, the report submitted for major alteration, in other words, the application itself should be certified by the engineer. We've been somewhat flexible in that, requiring something in the application certified by an architect or engineer as opposed to certifying the whole thing, which has financial and other considerations that an engineer might not know anything about. So we've been pretty flexible in the form that an engineer's or architect's sign off would take. But you're correct that our view is that we, in this case at least, we need something stamped by a design professional.
I think the concern is from there's the comments about stamp plans for the whole project versus a profile, which has been done in the past, which was provided in the documents. There's a huge difference for any cemetery that would come to the board for just simply replacing a road to then have, full-blown plans for every segment of the road. If there's a profile that's approved, which was included in the application, that's much different than fully stamped plans for all aspects. That's never been required by the cemetery board. And it would frankly be a detriment, I think, just generally on a policy area, if you're just going to replace a road to even do that, because the cost, as Mr. Polishek indicated, to have an engineer provide stamped plans for just repaving a road is a problem.
Okay, well, it's up for the board's consideration. I don't know if there's the current application does not have any indication of who provided the drawing. Am I correct?
It's page 26 of the application, and I don't see anything.
So we could direct the division to work with the cemetery to provide sufficient documentation that the plans were at least, what do I want to say, reviewed or prepared by an engineer, a design professional, so that we met our qualifications.
That's essentially what we're talking about.
I can't hear you close,
So essentially, I think that's what we're talking about.
but it's not what we have.
Right, but it's also not necessarily a full like 1-inch thick set of plans, each stamped by an architect or engineer. Okay, to answer this wants to explain that.
But I think the goal here is to get an application that passes the test as per our regulatory requirements. So it has to be reviewed by council for sufficient documentation. Are you okay there?
Sure.
Okay. And again, the board can make determinations, I think, broadly. When I say, I guess I take your point when I say stamped certified drawings. I don't really know what I'm talking about in that technical sense. But I do think there's a requirement that it has the approval of a design professional in some fashion. So unless the board determines otherwise, which I don't know what their obligations are. So I'll make a suggestion that we approve the determination that this is a type 2 action requiring no further review, and that we approve the project subject to the receipt of a satisfactory plan certification for the road and the drainage. I think that's part of the issue. That, again, above my pay grade, to know what the drainage issues are, but it seems like it's enough that it should require some design professional review. The cemetery can work with the division and council to make sure that it satisfies our requirements.
So just procedurally, I just want to understand what we would be doing. So we would be approving it subject to that process, and then it won't come before the board again.
Just like any other time where there's an approval subject to our receipt of a complete.
Well, it's not
set.
really though.
Up to
because
you.
It's not really, because and I'm fine, I just want to understand, because we're not really just talking about subject to, we're asking for the application to be supported so that it meets the legal statutory requirements. We haven't determined that it does at this point, but there's going to be a process by which the cemetery works with the division, and then a determination, it sounds like by counsel to the board, that the submission meets the statutory requirements, in which case we will have approved it without it coming back to the board. Is that correct?
That was my thought. Again, I think the board can make, we can decide that if you want to come back to the board. But my thought was that assuming that we can reach an agreement with the cemetery, that council and the division are deemed sufficient, that we would not need to come back to the board.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my concern is that, what we've essentially said is that it doesn't meet the requirements at this point to approve it. And that we have, we don't have concerns that it will once, new documentation submitted based on discussion with the division and council. But typically, in my limited experience, we wouldn't approve something unless we have a sufficient submission to assess. And we're not just talking about, another agency or municipality that needs to provide its approval. I mean, I guess I would throw this out to Rob, whether, if you feel comfortable with the board approving it and then you determining that it's a legally sufficient, that it meets the statutory requirements for approval. It just seems that at the very least it should come once that process happens, and once you've determined, the board should approve it at that point. We should approve what's being submitted.
That's going to be a fairly significant change in practice for us. We've had
I don't,
any number.
we can,
I'm not saying you're wrong, but that would be. This is not a unique situation where the applicant hasn't bothered to get a full set of I mean, for larger projects.
but we're not asking for a full set of architectural plans. I mean, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that whatever they submit, which is something different than a full set of architectural plans, it hasn't been submitted yet. It can be something very, very, easily, secured at, small cost, small time investment, but there should be something that we think meets the requirement. It doesn't, I'm not.
But that's equally true for ones where we've approved, say, a mausoleum building where we did need a full set of stamped plans, and the board nevertheless approved it, delegated to us the receipt of those stamped plans, and it didn't have to come back to them. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I am saying that this would be a change in policy that's not just this application.
I don't know. I think because when we say a full stamp set of plans, we're talking something very specific. We all understand what the requirement is, and it's ministerial in the sense that you're going to go get stamp plans. We're not talking about it. We haven't really identified. We don't have a common understanding at this point, to my mind, of what's going to be submitted, of what is going to be sufficient, of what's going to be sufficient. I mean, there's a legal determination to be made.
So just, if I can, so what the reg requires is a report submitted for a major alteration expected to cost in excess of $25,000 shall be certified by a licensed engineer. So my understanding is that we have not been having an engineer write these applications because a lot of these applications involve financial matters, which nothing bad being said about engineers, but it's not within their purview. We've typically required an engineer to certify or stamp that part of the project that they would be working on. Mm-hmm. That is wholly absent from the application before the board. Is it possible that the division and I can review a certification from an engineer and make a determination about whether or not that's a sufficient certification, that an engineer has, looked at it, reviewed it, and said that this is okay to move forward with? I trust that they can. Would I personally prefer that an application before the board have all of the regulatory requirements that our reg requires? Absolutely.
I have to say, I have been moving in this direct. I personally move in this direction. I say this broadly that the approval subject to, I think, I would defer that it was not approval subject to, unless it's like other permits which you don't have control over. Is there a timing issue here? I mean, if we were able to do this in the next board meeting, you're not going to build this thing.
No, but if I could just clarify what's being said, which I think is not intentionally inaccurate, but is inaccurate. If you look at Exhibit 4 of the application, there is a schematic of the project included in the application. That is the same as has been included for other projects, not only at this cemetery, but for other roadway projects. It was my understanding the discussion was whether or not that schematic could be either certified or stamped by an engineer as to the schematic of the project. It's not that it's excluded from the project, it's just that it is not stamped, that the board is now saying, or the division or council is now saying, that they'd like to change policy and have that done, or after the fact, approve that so that the certification is included. That has been pretty consistent with the board for decades, that if there is, part of that is associated with not just, I don't even want to talk just directly about this project, projects generally, if there are changes made at the board level, there's going to be, on a particular project, there's going to have to be additional changes done, and that's going to be subject to those changes being submitted to the cemetery division, that there's proof that that was done. So in this particular project, it's just simply the replacement of an existing road. They have provided a schematic with tremendous amount of detail in Exhibit 4 that goes through layers and drainage, that sort of thing. And so that was my understanding, that if the division or the board is looking for something, they're looking for some sort of professional comment on that schematic and not full-blown plans. That's not what the regs say.
I believe that you're correct. That what we're looking for is the approval of a design professional or the
on those schematics, and I guess that was it was my misunderstanding. If all we're talking about is, we believe that that would be legally sufficient if it was, reviewed and signed by the requisite design professional, that's a different story. I didn't get that from the beginning of the discussion. That is different. Rob, is that what you were contemplating?
I mean, if an engineer is comfortable reviewing Exhibit 4 and saying that, that meets standards and that's, sufficient design to move forward with, then that's fine with me. I mean, it's a professional licensed, profession, putting their license on the line, saying that this is suitable. I think that's what the reg contemplates, and that's what we should be requiring.
Right. I mean, the last thing that Rob said is most important. The purpose of this regulation is not for us to play architect or engineer. It's to have a licensed professional putting their license on the line behind a major alteration.
Right, and if that's all we're asking, I misunderstood. I thought we were asking for, them to take another crack at it and make something different. If that's the case, I think the board should review it, because it would be a different submission. But if we're looking for, for statutory purposes, to have a design professional review and sign off on it, I agree that, consistent with past practice, the board wouldn't review that again. We would just make provision in our approval that take place.
Okay, so if we're comfortable with that scenario, which is that we would require that the plans as submitted be acknowledged or signed by a design professional, certified by a design professional, and that is sufficient for us to approve the application with that as a condition. And I think we could move forward. I am sympathetic, not sympathetic, but I think the point about looking at new things and taking different actions has implications. We've got to make sure that we're consistent. We don't make changes without really understanding what that implication is on the industry, so to speak. And I don't think we're trying to do that. I think we're trying to make sure that we meet our requirements and that we protect the cemetery. And that might even be more true in smaller cemeteries, even though that's a additional set, might be an additional set of requirements. But we don't want a road being built that isn't, it's going to fall apart and cause other problems. So, okay. So that said, I think I have a motion on the table to approve the application, to approve the determination by the division that's type 2 action, and approve the application, subject to the receipt of a certified design professional on the drawings as submitted, and all other required permits. That sufficient? That's sufficient?
Yes.
You have a second?
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion
Aye.
carries. Thank you. Good conversation with people. Denying that. All right, Green Spring Cemetery, major renovation?
This should be simpler.
This is Brendan Stanton again. Green Springs Natural Cemetery is in the town of Newfield, Tompkins County. They've submitted an application for approval of cemetery renovation. And what they would like to do is demolish a disused and dilapidated horse barn that is on their property. This is a portion of the property that is at the extreme edge of the cemetery. The eastern part is near a gravel access road and an emergency services tower. I visited the site. The building is indeed in disrepair. It's not near their current burials. This is a very large, very unique cemetery, 130 acres. So they really mean it when they say it's not near their burials. So they intend to remove this building. They've got estimates for $5,295. They want to tear this thing down ASAP. And it's really only going to take probably a day or so to take it away. They're aware that they cannot bury the demolition materials. There was an issue in the past with the cemetery where they had attempted to do that. They're aware that the materials have to be taken away from the site. So with all that in consideration, I've recommended in favor of approval of this application.
Okay. Rob, any other comments?
This could be classified as a type 2 action, as an emergency action that's immediately necessary on a limited or temporary basis for the protection and preservation of life, health, property, and natural resources. The Seeker Handbook at page 46 gives demolition as an example of the kind of activity that would fall into that type 2 activity. So I think it's appropriate for the board to classify this as a type 2. And other than that, I have no comments on the application.
Okay. And it's a $5,000 cost to pay for this out of general fund? Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you, Brendan. So I'll make a motion to approve the application for Green Springs Cemetery for the demolition of a building on their property to declare as a type 2 action and approve the major renovation demolition of the building. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion
Aye.
carries. Vestal Hills, the Memorial Park, land sale expenses.
Rob, you want to do this? You want me to?
Go ahead, Liz.
All right, hang on a second. Pull up set the numbers. This is a follow-up to an application we had in June where Vestal Hills sold a piece of land. To a nearby church, we approved that. They had not, in our view, at least sufficiently documented their necessary expenses of the sale, most of which were claimed in the nature of legal expenses. So we asked for additional information on that. We got additional information on that. So the cemetery is seeking so the statute says that when a cemetery sells land, the money has to go into the PM fund less necessary expenses. So the question is that those they can pay before they put the proceeds into the permanent maintenance fund. So the question is, what are necessary expenses here? We went through the submission. There's one. There's transfer tax fees that I think are clearly necessary expenses. To the extent they're bearing them, that's entirely appropriate. Then that brings us to the question of legal fees. There seem to have been two law firms involved in this transaction. One, Coughlin and Gerhardt in Binghamton, representing the cemetery itself. We're recommending all approval of most of their fees. It's about, I want to say about 1,700 approximately that we're recommending the board not approve. There was a certain amount of their fees that were devoted to drafting a Supreme Court petition for approval of the sale of land. The statute in 2015 has not required a cemetery to go to court to get approval of a sale of land. And in this case, they clearly didn't do that. They came here. So the time spent drafting court papers that were neither needed nor used seems to us not to be a necessary expense of the transaction. We did let the cemetery know that their attorneys know that. We're not going to recommend approval of that piece as a necessary expense. Haven't heard from them. The second piece is that Park Lawn Corporation, which is a Canadian/Texas conglomerate that has purchased the firm that in turn owns the certificates of indebtedness of this cemetery, submitted legal bills on the order of $19,000. We don't see how these are necessary expenses to the transaction, given that they weren't incurred by the cemetery. Again, we've put the cemetery's attorneys on notice, haven't heard back from them. The fact that we're not recommending that these be found to be necessary expenses doesn't actually say anything about whether the cemetery can or can't pay them. It's just a question of whether, and the cemetery does have adequate general funds to pay all of these bills. It's just a question, can they net them out of this transaction before putting the money in PM? So the specific recommendation is that the board find that $17,256.39 represents necessary expenses incurred that they can net out before depositing the rest of the sale proceeds into PM. Those are most of Coughlin and Gerhardt's bill and certain transfer taxes.
Okay. Rob, you have a
No, Louis provided a great summary. Thank you, Louis.
That's because you and I came up with it. Yeah.
All right, so I have a motion to approve the necessary expenses as described in our conversation of
$256.39.
Okay, which is a combination of some legal fees and land transfer tax. Are there any other questions on that?
No.
Okay, I have a motion, second.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Motion is approved. Troy, No, Oakwood Cemetery, it is reverse of up top. Oakwood Cemetery in Troy, PM loan.
Alicia, you want me to do this?
Sure.
Okay, so Oakwood Cemetery, this is another one that's coming back to us. Oakwood, you guys previously approved a major alteration whereby Oakwood Cemetery is gonna replace a retort with an updated one. They were supposed to get a commercial loan on it. I don't think they represented to the bank that, it's unclear what happened. The bank seemed to think that they could rely on the cemetery's PM fund as collateral for the loan. Rob's actually got legal authority for why that's a no-no, but we think the cemetery already knew that was a no-no, so it's not entirely clear to me why the bank thought that. We have had other cemeteries try to pledge their portions of their PM funds collateral. I don't think that was the case here. These guys know better than that, so I don't know why the bank got confused. In any event, they are now seeking instead to borrow against their PM fund an additional $240,000 to pay for the retort. There is a certain amount of time urgency here. They have to close by, I want to say it's November 28th? 22nd, November 22nd. So 2 weeks from yesterday, to keep their price. So it's going to require them to have some quick footwork in court. In the course of this, they had a previous PM loan. The cemetery had sold a parcel of land and had borrowed against the proceeds of that sale for various necessary capital expenses with court approval. The payback schedule, and I think Bernie Vogel from the cemetery is on the line, maybe you can shed a little more light on this, but somehow the court's order was that they were supposed to pay back a fixed amount of $5,000 a year on that loan, plus the income earned on the proceeds of the sale that were sort of, even though they're technically PM, they kept them in a separate account and tracked them separately. Sorry, not the proceeds, the income on it. They were supposed to just slice off that income and pay it back. Instead, what they did is until that fund started generating income, they paid the $5,000, and then after that, they started paying $10,000. The result of which, after a bunch of calculations, means that there's still approximately, I don't have Rob probably has the precise number they had, just over $71,000 left on that loan. That should have, had the original order been followed, been paid off by now, but isn't. We had a lot of back and forth with the cemetery about the best way to address this. They were originally going to pay off the $240,000 over 24 years at $10,000 a year. After some discussion, what we came up with is they're going to pay, they're going to go back to court and try to consolidate the new loan and take the new loan and consolidate the old loan under that, where starting next year, they'll start paying $16,000 a year back to themselves with a final payment of less than that in the 20th year. So the loan gets paid off faster than was originally anticipated when they came to us with this application, cleans up the fact that their payoff has been falling short on their existing loan, and still gets them the cash they need to buy this retort and keep their crematory operating and compliant with DEC regulations. So we're recommending that the board in turn recommend Supreme Court approval along those lines. I'll also note that some of this back and forth didn't get fully reflected in the third revised draft of the petition that the board had. So there is a fourth, I think we're up to, revised draft of the petition that got circulated today. And there may still need to be further tweaks to the proposed order that goes with that. But what we're recommending approval on now is additional borrowing. I'd ask Bernie Vogel to be on the phone to just explain what happened with the previous one, but just to to clarify, we're recommending A, approval of additional borrowing of $240,000. B, consolidation of that with, Alicia, do you have the precise number?
Of the $71,567.18.
That's currently outstanding on the existing PM loan. And C, a payback of $16,000 a year starting next year. I think they put October 31st, 2023, and every October 31st thereafter, with a final payment in the 20th year of how much?
$7,567.18.
Right. So that's what we're recommending. Mechanically, what we anticipate happening is if you guys agree with that, we will draft a letter containing the board's recommendation that will get attached to the petitioner's papers and going back to court. And hopefully this can all happen very quickly. Bernie, I don't know if you have anything to add, because I'm curious what happened, how we ended up with $10,000 a year instead of the income.
Yeah, back then we borrowed $215,500. Good morning, everybody. $1,500, and
Break it up, Bernie.
Bernie, you're coming in and out.
many different draft petitions here we had, but we never actually received the final one from our council at the time. So we've been paying the $5,000 a year. And then when the land was sold, the board voted to double that, and we've been paying 10. But again, it came as a complete surprise to us that anything beyond the 5,000 was required, and we're so sorry about that.
To be fair, I think we've audited Oakwood Cemetery since then, and we did too.
Yeah, some of the previous petitions, the draft petitions, said that it would be revisited upon the land sale. Another one said that the net proceeds of the land sale would be put towards the loan. So again, when our current council went to Troy and found this actual order, we were, again, taken quite aback by it.
And to state the obvious, there's absolutely nothing here to suggest that anybody did anything intentionally improperly or that any funds went anywhere other than for cemetery use. But given what I talked about earlier about supply chain issues and retorts and inflation on this sales, it's absolutely critical that they have access to these funds in time to close on the 22nd.
Okay, so first of all, Cemetery Board, I apologize for emailing you, not moments before the meeting, but this morning, with the revised petition and the revised proposed order that was based upon further review by both the cemetery and division about what funds were outstanding and to try to get the proposed order in better shape for your review. So I circulated that to the board beforehand. I printed out copies and made them available to folks attending here. I won't go through everything that Louis already went through, only to say that what we envision would be non-substantive changes to the petition. From here, I've confirmed with their counsel that aside from clearing up typos, aside from attaching the cemetery board's resolution on this matter to the petition, that the petition in order that I circulated to you will be what is submitted to the court. And so what the division and I are asking the board to do today is to review the petition proposed order, and if you concur, then approve.
Recommend.
Yeah, recommend the Supreme Court approve the order in substantial form.
Okay. Any other questions? I understand time is of the essence, but we can only do what we can do. I'll make a motion.
Yeah, I have a question. I just looked at the petition. I understand, and there's, the time sensitivity, but, there was a Supreme Court order that wasn't complied with. And so I think in the petition, going before the same court, and I think for us to provide approval at the Supreme Court is then going to obviously take fingerprinting into account and approving it. I do think there should be some explanation in the petition, or in some sort of an affirmation or something that we provide, explaining that, essentially explaining what happened. I think the order wasn't complied with, and I think it's, it would be important for the board to acknowledge that we are approving the proposed order, even though the last one wasn't complied with, and why. I'm not sure why that isn't in the petition.
So Jill, we talked about that yesterday. And basically, because we were up against the time-wise, we were originally going to ask that got put in, and we ran out of time. Mindful of the long discussion we had on Pine Lawn about you guys approving things that aren't before you, my suggestion is how to handle that on this instance is to amend the motion to require that their papers include an affirmation explaining what happened, and that way they don't have to change the petition, and it's still approved when somebody explains what happened.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So if there are no other things, I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the restructured loan from the Permanent Maintenance Fund, and request or require that they provide an affirmation to the Supreme Court with an explanation about what happened before in terms of the Supreme Court order and what we're doing now to correct it. Does that do it? Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. That concludes our regular business. Is Mike Selman still on the line?
I am.
Mike, it's a little bit ad hoc, but I have in front of me the certificate of appreciation for 30 years of service that was provided by the Secretary of State at an event we had in Albany. You weren't able to attend, and I've been looking for a time to do this. You obviously can't get this directly, but I just did want to take a moment to recognize that you've got 30 years of service to the state of New York, and to congratulate you on that and to thank you for your service. And we'll make sure that you get a copy of the proclamation or the certification, that the certificate of appreciation that the Secretary provided. So thank you again, Mike, for all of your help.
Well, you're very welcome. I'm speechless.
As they say, our pleasure. We have an opportunity for public comment. The next board meeting is scheduled for December 13th, but we always are open to comments from the public.
Dave, before you go, just going to note the time change for that meeting. It is going to be at 1 p.m. It is not going to be at 10:30 a.m. One of the board members had a conflict with the morning time. If any of the members of the public choose to show up early, we're going to be having our pre-holiday party, and there may very well be pizza.
Okay, so I'm opening the floor to comments from people online or people in the audience, which I only see a couple, and looking for any public comment that they have to offer on our business. Anybody wishing to comment from the public?
Hi, it's Rich Mylan from Greenwood. I would just like to thank the staff and the board for the work you did on our unique and very complicated application. I imagine it was a case of first impression. It was for us. Thank you again. I mean, it's just so good to have the board and cemeteries working together to get things done for the public, and much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the visual of your desk is why you need more office space, right?
That might be a bigger challenge than office space. All right, anybody else wishing to address the board?
Sure. David Fleming from the New York State Association of Cemeteries. I did want to just, following up on Mr. Seelman's commendation, thank him for all of his work and working with our cemeteries across upstate New York on a number of issues, particularly in the last year, that have been difficult during the pandemic. Thank you for doing that, and thank you for being really the most important person in the division and probably the Department of State in being able to pronounce some of these upstate names where people from New York City have never been before, and suddenly we all know how to correctly pronounce things that we see on the agenda. So thank you for doing that, Michael. I do want to thank the board also for how quickly you responded in the delegation of duties piece to the division. The director outlined two of the really most critical points that we're facing right now for the cemeteries. That is the supply chain crunch that every industry is facing. It is particularly tight in the cemetery industry because of the pandemic, and obviously cemeteries were hit particularly hard with a number of requests for additional retorts, and there's a really short supply. So anything we can do to increase that or speed up that process is welcome. Certainly in the columbarium side as well. You're dealing with a lot of cemeteries who are taking the opportunity to meet a public need. It's not a complicated project. It's just a slab with a prefab installation, and making that as easy as possible for particularly our smaller cemeteries is extremely important. And so I thank you for delegating those duties. We look forward to working with you on those. Thank you.
You could go further. All right.
I could.
Thank you, well, anything else like that?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't think there's anybody else wishing to address the board. There's no need for an executive session? Nope. So I'll make a motion to adjourn the November meeting of the board. And again, thank you for your kind comments. Have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye? Carried.